As Mert said there, my name is Lorraine Walsh. I'm originally from Mayo but living in Galway, and I'm married to Gary. I'm speaking here this morning in a personal capacity. However, I'm always and ever speaking on behalf of the other 220 families tied up in this situation when I have an opportunity. I'd like to thank the Royal College of Physicians for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in this important event this morning. So how did I end up here? In order to give you a context, I should probably start back in 2011. I received an invitation to have a free smear test done as part of the cervical check programme. I attended my GP in June 2011 for the test, and in August I was informed that the test result had come back as low-grade precancer cells. He said to me, look, the majority of these revert to normal and there's absolutely nothing that you should concern yourself about, but please come back in 6 months for a review appointment, a review smear. So I returned the following year as a normal practice and had my smear. My GP called me in April 2012 to say that my smear had come back and that I required a colposcopy. He explained that I had high-grade precancer cells and that I would certainly expect to have a LETS procedure. In May, I attended the colposcopy clinic and had a LETS procedure and was given all the relevant information of what to expect, and I was told to come back in 6 months for a follow-up colposcopy. I went back to work the following day, and to be honest, I didn't think any more about it until I got a call in June to say that the results of my biopsy had come back and things had progressed. I still remember the day I got the call, as clear as today. My heart just sank and I thought, don't blow this out of proportion, but I knew there was something amiss. The following Monday, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer at the age of 34. I was devastated. I was referred to the Mater Hospital in Dublin for my treatment, and I had an extremely positive experience there from start to finish. The consultants and oncology nurse specialists were incredible and made what was a very difficult time so much easier. Their kindness, care, and expertise was exceptional. They knew I desperately wanted to have a family, and they certainly did their very best to preserve my fertility. I went on to have a cone biopsy, and the results of the cone biopsy came back that I didn't get clear margins, so I had to proceed and have a radical abdominal trachelectomy, which thankfully resulted in clear margins. So the team went above and beyond, and I was treated so well. This critical relationship was built on trust of literally handing over my sick body to the consultant and he handing back a nice, fixed, healthy body to me again. They always and ever will be heroes in my eyes. So I was cancer-free. And most importantly, there was still hope. Hope that Gary and I would have the family we so desperately wanted. Hope can never be underestimated, as it gave us the opportunity to move to the next step, which is IVF. I thought naively that IVF would be the answer to my prayers, and after the fertility-preserving efforts, that we would have a baby. That didn't happen. The IVF failed, my ovarian reserve went through the floor, and I was advised that the chances of success were slim to none. The hope faded, and reality hit home. I fell apart. And I plunged into what I can only describe as a grief-filled tunnel that was very hard to escape from. The heartache nearly broke me mentally. I spent many months crying and I was inconsolable. Something I struggled with privately, as I was too ashamed to tell my family that the strong woman I had grown into had literally fallen apart. It was a very difficult time. But what can you do? You either give up on life or you pick yourself up and start again. And thankfully I managed to do that. I began to come to terms with my loss and I altered my expectations of what life had become. Beating cancer physically involved a lot of pain and suffering, but it was easier than beating cancer mentally. The mental scars and demons are a lot harder to figure out. Cancer for me meant the end of the opportunity to become parents, and it was heartbreaking. But as they say, time is a great healer, and I comforted myself with thoughts of fate and destiny deciding our future, and it was a life without children. I've always consoled myself that I have to be thankful for my life. I do have my life. So eventually the dark times subsided, and I picked myself up and moved on with my life. So back to why am I here? On the 30th of April 2018, I got a call to ask me to return to the colposcopy clinic, as there had been an audit carried out on my smears prior to diagnosis. What did this mean? I was very confused. And of course, the media didn't help with conflicting stories in the press. But accurate or inaccurate, it was the only place we were getting information at that point. I attended the cervical check clinic, and I was told that the screening cytology prior to my diagnosis was read inaccurately. It was reported at the time as CIN1, and following the review, it was reported as CIN3. Immediately after the disclosure, followed some explanations about screening and its limitations. Truthfully, my mind was blown. I had not heard about limitations or false positives or false negatives before this, and I think we've all heard so much about false positives and false negatives and limitations in the last few months. And it's a shame that this information wasn't out there retrospectively. But all I wanted to know was what happened. I wanted to know the bottom line and what was the detail that the audit found, and did it fall within the limitations of screening, or was there negligence involved? That's all I wanted to know. Of course, a lot of questions ensued from my husband and I, but the limited amount of information supplied as part of the audit was difficult, as it told us very little. This was also difficult for the consultants who were delivering limited information that was inadequate, to say the least, in trying to explain a delicate situation to women and families that had already suffered greatly through their cervical cancer journey. What did this disclosure meeting tell me? Well, very little. There was a misreading of my slide prior to diagnosis, and they could not tell me if it was negligence or if it fell within the limitations of screening. So as you can understand, that was difficult to hear. I just wanted the facts, nothing more and nothing less. From a patient perspective, my husband and I didn't ask for this. We were invited to be told there was an error in the reading of the smear slide that was taken the year before I was diagnosed, and subsequently told that if it was read accurately, that it could have had a major impact on my treatment, thus avoiding some of the surgery which could have enabled us to have the family we so desperately wanted. This was shocking, life-changing news for both of us, and yet we were still not being told the full facts. Of course, the other disturbing matter that came to light that day was the fact that the information in my own case had been sent to the colposcopy clinic in August 2016 and just put on my file. This information was remarkably not shared and not disclosed with me. It was explained to me that this information would not have made any clinical difference to my current situation, but it certainly made a difference as to how I got to that point. And I suppose the what-ifs have crept into my mind since that day. Would it have made a difference to me? Would earlier intervention have allowed me to keep some or all of my cervix, thus making the fertility journey a little more straightforward? I'll never know. The other train of thought is, would I have been better off not knowing this information and just continued on with my life? The answer is absolutely. I would have avoided a lot of heartache and upset if I hadn't learned about this information. But who has the right to keep that information from me about my life and my body? Nobody. Had the cervical check information not emerged in the public view, would we be still sending slides to labs that are not accredited and outsourcing to other labs, resulting in more slides being misread? This is not just a question for me and others tied up in this debacle, but for all women and the wider Irish society. There are two major aspects to the current debacle that have affected patients both physically and mentally. one being negligence on the part of the labs, and the other being non-disclosure of the audit results. And obviously the major part of any compensation that will result from this will be from negligence, and the non-disclosure will be less significant in relation to compensation. But less significant from a physical point of view, of course. But is it less significant from a mental and emotional point of view? Let me put this scenario to you. Imagine being diagnosed with a life-threatening illness such as cancer and being told by a doctor that you could potentially die. But the doctor will do everything in his power to make you better. You subsequently get the appropriate treatment and you recover from the cancer. You're absolutely ecstatic and forever indebted to the doctor for saving your life and giving you back your life. He or she becomes your real-life hero. And believe it or not, that's what consultants are to cancer patients that hand them back their lives. So you continue to revisit them every 3 months in the beginning for your checkups, and then as the years go by, every 6 months and every year. And you go back in and you approach them with optimistic caution and you say, am I okay? Is the cancer back? Will I be all right? And they say, no, you're fine. Absolutely great. Off you go. Now just imagine this person calling you back out of sequence of appointments to say, actually I have some news for you. Your slides prior to your cancer diagnosis seem to have been misread. And this might have meant that if they were read correctly, that you could have avoided or been cancer or been diagnosed at an earlier stage. Then he or she goes on to say that this could have saved you some of the pain and suffering and maybe some of the life-changing conditions that was caused by treatment that you received. Or in some cases, for the widowers, been informed that earlier intervention could have possibly saved their wives' lives. It's gut-wrenching news to receive, let me tell you. On top of that, you're also told that the information for a significant amount of time was withheld and decided not to share with you. Now, imagine having to return to this person each year to ask them, am I okay? Is the cancer back? Are you sure? Is there information there you're not telling me? Do I know you are telling me everything? The trust has been eroded. And how can we rebuild that trust? I'm certainly open to all your views and suggestions today on how that will be achieved going forward. This is a major communications and trust issue, and surely patients are not just about appointments. The doctor-patient relationship is so important for all of us, and nothing should ever knowingly happen or be allowed to happen that undermines that relationship. There are lots of questions and answers outstanding. We all know that. I accepted a role as a patient representative on the Cervical Check Steering Committee appointed by the Minister for Health for one reason and one reason only. I can't change the past. I am where I am and I must accept that. I accepted the role to try and help change the future so that we learn from the errors of the past and we move forward to create a better system to serve the women and men of Ireland. I'm not here to point fingers or lay blame, but we must all learn from this, and I believe we must all be responsible in taking a proactive approach to situations. It's vitally important to have direction and purpose. Without this, we lack focus and clarity, a problem that many clinicians faced when they given the audit results. They were supplied with limited information on the audits and the audit results, and then forced under duress to disclose this information. Subsequently, these disclosure meetings in some cases resulted in poor communication. The clinicians didn't have the detail that I would assume each patient was looking for, following by questions like, was it negligence in my case, or is this a case of limitations of screening? And the consultants didn't have those answers. And of course, the patients wanted those answers. The clinicians didn't know, and they had to deliver the don't know news to people who were ill, in shock, and vulnerable. And now we're in a situation that we still don't know the full facts of this debacle. Frustrating, I'm sure, for the clinicians, and heart-wrenching and confusing for the patients and families. There are no winners in this situation. I believe it's important for bodies such as the Royal College of Physicians to support clinicians, to give more guidance on policy issues such as open disclosure, to push back and demand policy and clarity and direction. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. Nobody has all the answers. But it's important for you to ask the questions and demand the answers for you and your patients. I've no doubt in my mind that I wouldn't be standing here today or alive without the cervical check programme and the wonderful clinicians that gave me back my life. But of course, I now wonder, had my smear been read correctly, would I be at home with my children around me today? Or would women like Irene Teep and Emma Vic-Vahuna and others be alive to see their children grow up? As some of you are aware, the 50th recommendation in Dr. Scally's report suggested that the Department of Health should encourage and facilitate a meeting involving the presidents of the Medical Council, the Royal Colleges and their faculties, leaders of other medical organisations and representatives of the women and families involved in the cervical check screening problems. On that issue, we at 221 Plus, the support group for the women involved, have now requested that we take ownership of this recommendation. We'll be writing to all of the suggested parties with an invitation to come together with the appropriate mediation to build these relationships with an ultimate aim of creating a better future for patients and their clinicians. So finally, I just want to say, we can't change the past, but we can be part of changing the future. So hopefully we can do this together. In the words of Socrates, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Thank you.